Lately, I've been seeing a lot of videos, including from YouTubers that I tend to generally agree with, claims that the reports that we have a 25-day supply of diesel fuel is an indication of how much, of when we will run out of diesel fuel. That is, they seem to be claiming that we will actually run completely out of diesel fuel from 25 days from the date that that report came out. I don't think that's how it works. See, there's always a that's only the date. I mean, that's only 25 days is the date from if all the refineries stopped working and there was no input of diesel fuel from the refineries into that supply, into that 25-day supply. But the refineries still are working, and so there's still input into that supply. So that 25-day supply of oil, I believe, is just an indication of the buffer, because there always has to be a buffer, because it would be so cataclysmic if we completely ran out of diesel fuel. So no, it's not an indication of when we will run out of diesel. It's just an indication of the size of the buffer of diesel fuel. So that's the main reason I'm just making this video, because I've just been seeing so many of those. And I think it's important to be careful not to create alarm when it's not warranted, because there can be a crying wolf phenomena can be induced, where the audience will maybe not find that source, the YouTuber, so trustworthy going forward if they find out, oh wait, 25 days has passed since that last video and we still have diesel fuel. We have not run out completely. Shipping has not ground to a halt. And so there may be some lowering of the credibility of these YouTubers, even though majority of their claims that they make otherwise are warranted. And so especially in the cases, I think I don't want their credibility to be lowered when I tend to agree with their normative statements. That is, that by normative I mean claims that the way the world should be, or when they make criticisms of the system where it is acting in a wrong manner and needs to be corrected. So I think that this issue doesn't need to be an issue. I mean, it's a factual matter that can be easily clarified. If they just need to look into it a little bit and think it through. That I've been studying these conspiracy theories. Now, once again, I don't criticize. I'm a conspiracy theorist myself, but I've been studying these conspiracies for since at least back in the late '90s, from the early days of the internet. And oftentimes there's been claims across the political spectrum on both sides about doom and gloom, like Chicken Little scenarios where the saying claiming the sky is falling, and usually it does not. In most cases it does not, but they'll still continue to make these claims that the sky is going to fall on a certain date, and it doesn't usually happen. Now sometimes it does, but that's just but most of the time it has not happened. And so that's what I found. I mean, sometimes like where it has happened, it's been like in the housing bubble, past housing bubble from the 2000s, the early mid 2000s. It took a long time, and also the tech bubble. But that was also both the mainstream and alternative was saying that that was a bubble going on there. And it turned out, yes, there was a bubble that popped, and the sky did fall, so to speak. But oftentimes it does not. So, and one other time, I'm just thinking of like the peak oil crisis, that did not come to pass. There's supposedly by now, a long time ago, we would have reached the point where we would have required more oil would have to be burned to run the pumps to get the oil out of the ground than we would get out of the ground, than what we have as a product of the pumping, because the oil by now would be so far down, deep down, we'd already have exhausted all the oil close to the ground that we'd have to dig so deep to pump out the oil, and require so much energy to get the oil out of the ground that it would be a net loss. So nobody would bother doing it, and we'd be as a result, completely out of crude oil by now. Have no oil to refine whatsoever. Gasoline or diesel or any fuel. That would already happen like several years ago, according to the doom and gloomers. But that was a mainstream, both mainstream and alternative independent media were making that claims back in the 2000s that by now we would have reached the past of peak oil, and we would require more oil to get out of the ground than we would get out of the ground, and so we would be in a cataclysmic crisis by now. But instead, we have at least OPEC, they're limiting their supply. There's not really any shortage, although there's cases that can be made that due to canceling of oil permits for drilling, that we have a artificial shortage, at least in the U.S. But overall, worldwide, there's no peak oil crisis has been reached. If anything, there's a glut. There's plenty of hundreds of years of oil now. If we were to access it, and it would not require more oil to get out of the ground than we'd get out of the ground. So the peak oil crisis has been totally debunked, definitely by now. So, yeah, but people have just kind of forgotten about that. They move on to the next Chicken Little type of skies falling, and so these are all like non-normative claims about issues that do not need to be an issue. I tend to focus more on the normative issues. That is, how should we govern society? What is the ideal form of government? That's something we've been struggling since the time of Socrates and Plato, and even before. So for thousands of years we've been discussing this and struggling with it, and it's the most challenging question, I believe. But and you don't want to undermine that, the normative questioning that needs to be done. That I tend to agree with the YouTubers that are making what I believe are false claims about the 25-day supply of oil, and so I don't want them to undermine overall their positions, the normative positions that I tend to agree with, by making false claims about how in 25 days we're gonna run out of fuel, diesel fuel, even though that's a complete mischaracterization of that statistic. So there's always input that's still coming in from the refineries to the supply of oil. So it should maybe they should need to rename that statistic report as the 25-day buffer of oil, rather than calling it the 25-day supply of oil, so that it doesn't alarm anybody, and we can go on to other issues. Although it is a smaller buffer. That's the problem with it, is it's a smaller buffer than it has been in a long time. The buffer of diesel fuel, and diesel prices are going up as a result, and that is concerning. Yes, so that's what should be addressed. Should call it the buffer is smaller than what it has been, at least for a long time. That's the problem. It's not that we're going to run out of diesel in 25 days from when the report came out. That's not how it works. It's a 25-day buffer. It's gotten smaller, and so in the supply-demand economics, it's a problem that's going to cause the price of oil to go up because the demand is still there, but the supply is less, indicated by that 25-day buffer that is smaller now, but still have a high demand of diesel fuel. So that's the main point I want to get across from this video. And so if you're watching, thanks for watching.